The rain hammered against the cracked windows of the abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Mogadishu as Lieutenant Sarah Chen pressed her back against the cold concrete wall. It was 11:32 p.m. and everything had gone catastrophically wrong. Her team's extraction point had been compromised, communications were down, and she was alone in hostile territory with intelligence that could save hundreds of American lives. The metallic taste of fear mixed with determination on her tongue as she heard boots echoing through the empty corridors, getting closer with each passing second. She had trained for moments like this at Coronado, pushed through Hell Week when most men had quit. But nothing quite prepared you for the reality of having enemy fighters hunting you in the darkness. Before we begin, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. Sarah's fingers traced the outline of her sidearm, checking her remaining ammunition by feel alone. 2 magazines left. The documents in her vest pocket seemed to burn against her chest, containing proof of an imminent attack on a U.S. convoy scheduled for dawn. She had to survive. Failure wasn't just about her life anymore. Taking a deep breath, she moved silently through the shadows, her training kicking in like muscle memory. Every SEAL learned to become a ghost when necessary, and right now being invisible was her only advantage. The voices grew louder, speaking in rapid Arabic. Sarah counted at least 4 distinct voices, maybe 5. Through a gap in the wall, she could see their silhouettes moving with the confidence of men who believed they had cornered their prey. What they didn't know was that their prey had teeth. She calculated her options with the cold precision her instructors had drilled into her during endless training scenarios. Run and risk being shot in the open, or wait and let them come to her. Neither option was good, but one gave her slightly better odds. "She came this way," one voice said in accented English, clearly meant for her to hear. "American woman, alone, scared. Why don't you come out? We will be merciful." Sarah almost smiled at the obvious lie. She'd seen what these fighters did to prisoners, especially female soldiers. Her hand tightened on her weapon as footsteps approached her hiding spot. The beam of a flashlight swept across the room, inches from where she crouched behind a pile of rotting crates. Her heart pounded so loudly she was certain they could hear it. Sweat dripped down her spine despite the cool night air. This was it. The moment that would define whether she made it home or became another name on the memorial wall. The flashlight moved away, and she exhaled slowly through her nose. But then she felt it, the cold press of metal against the back of her head. "Don't move," a voice whispered in English. 2 more fighters emerged from the shadows, their weapons trained on her center mass. She'd been so focused on the obvious threat that she'd missed the one circling behind. "Amateur mistake. One that might cost her everything. Drop the weapon," the man behind her commanded. His voice carried the authority of a leader. Sarah's mind raced through scenarios, calculating angles and distances. The gun pressed harder against her skull. "I said drop it!" Slowly, she lowered her pistol to the ground, raising her hands in apparent surrender. The men visibly relaxed, believing they'd won. That was their first mistake. "Check her for documents," the leader said, stepping closer. "The ones who want her will pay extra if we bring the intelligence too." As rough hands reached for her vest, Sarah made her move. Years of close-quarters combat training exploded into action. She twisted away from the gun barrel, her elbow connecting with her captor's throat in a precise strike that sent him staggering backward, gasping for air. Before the others could react, she'd swept the legs out from under the nearest fighter and rolled, grabbing her fallen weapon in one fluid motion. The warehouse erupted into chaos. Shouts filled the air as more fighters poured in from adjacent rooms. Sarah fired twice, the muzzle flashes briefly illuminating surprised faces. She dove behind a concrete pillar as return fire chipped away at her cover, sending dust and debris raining down. Her training instructor's voice echoed in her memory. "Stay calm. Assess, adapt, overcome." She counted rounds, tracked movement patterns, and waited for her moment. "She's military." Someone shouted. "Trained! Be careful!" The tone had shifted from confident hunters to wary predators. Sarah used their hesitation, moving to a new position while they were still focused on where she'd been. She spotted a rusted metal staircase leading to the warehouse's second level. Higher ground meant better visibility and limited approach angles. She sprinted for it, feeling bullets whistle past her head, the sound of death missing by mere inches. Halfway up the stairs, her boot crashed through a weakened step. She stumbled, catching herself on the railing as pain shot through her ankle. No time to assess the damage. Keep moving. At the top, she found a small office with windows overlooking the warehouse floor. 5 fighters remained active below, moving more cautiously now. They'd learned to respect the threat. The leader barked orders, organizing them into a coordinated search pattern. These weren't random insurgents, they were trained soldiers. Sarah's radio suddenly crackled to life, making her jump. "Sparrow, this is Eagle 1. Do you copy?" The voice of her team leader, Commander Marcus Reed, cut through the static. Hope surged through her chest. "Eagle 1, Sparrow Actual," she whispered urgently. "Warehouse District, grid November 7-3. Multiple hostiles. Intelligence secure. Require immediate extraction. Copy that, Sparrow. QRF is wheels up. ETA 15 minutes. Can you hold? 15 minutes. An eternity in combat time." Sarah looked at her remaining ammunition and the fighters systematically clearing rooms below. "Affirmative," she replied, because there was no other answer a SEAL could give. "I'll be here." The next 14 minutes felt like hours. Sarah used every trick she'd learned, creating false noise signatures, moving between positions, making them think there were multiple defenders. She fired sparingly, making each round count, turning the hunters' advantage of numbers into a liability as they became paranoid and started shooting at shadows. One fighter accidentally wounded his comrade in the confusion, reducing their effective strength. At 2:17 a.m., Sarah heard the most beautiful sound in the world, the distant thump of helicopter rotors. The fighters heard it too, their body language shifting from aggressive to desperate. They knew what was coming. The leader shouted for them to rush her position, a last-ditch attempt to complete their mission before the rescue arrived. Sarah steadied her breathing, sighted down her weapon, and prepared for the final push. The office door exploded inward. 2 fighters charged through, but Sarah was already moving, using their momentum against them. She engaged the first in hand-to-hand combat, her training taking over in a blur of strikes and counters. The second hesitated, unable to fire without hitting his companion. That hesitation was fatal to their mission. Sarah disarmed the first fighter and used his own weapon to force the second into retreat. The helicopter's searchlight suddenly blazed through the windows, turning night into day. Rappelling ropes dropped and black-clad figures fast roped down, her SEAL brothers coming to bring her home. The remaining fighters scattered like cockroaches, their will to fight evaporating in the face of overwhelming force. Within 60 seconds, the warehouse was secure. Commander Reed approached, his weathered face breaking into a rare smile. "You okay, Chen?" Sarah nodded, suddenly exhausted as the adrenaline drained away. She pulled the documents from her vest, handing them over. "Mission accomplished, sir." On the helicopter ride back to base, strapped in beside her team, Sarah finally allowed herself to process what had happened. They'd pressed a gun to her head, thinking she was just another scared soldier. They'd had no idea she was a Navy SEAL, trained in the most elite program on Earth, forged in fire and determination, and absolutely unwilling to quit. As the Somali coastline disappeared behind them and safety approached ahead, she closed her eyes and smiled. She'd held the line for 15 minutes against impossible odds, and the convoy would be warned. Hundreds of lives saved because one SEAL refused to break. That was what the trident on her uniform truly meant, not just surviving impossible situations, but winning them.